What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by, my Indian brother, SoRealSuneil. I haven't had him on the channel in a long time. Said what's up to him yesterday in the DMs. He's like, let's get a show in, and we scheduled a time, and here we are. Here we are in the morning today. I don't really do morning streams, but when Sunil gives you a time, you gotta be there. So I'm here, and he's here. How you doing? How you doing this morning, Sunil?
Yeah, man. Merry Christmas again to you. Yeah, I was excited when you reached out, wishing me Merry Christmas. We haven't worked together. It feels like all season, but you definitely one of my favorite content creators. So I was like, man, I need to talk to this dude. I haven't talked to him in some time. So I'm glad we got to make it happen, man. And I know the show's gonna be great, brother.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. Obviously, by the title of the video, the 49ers versus Commanders game recap, the Niners have won 8 in a row. We haven't talked about our Niners loss in 8 weeks, which has been great. Obviously, not necessarily so great for content creation because as a content creator, whenever the Niners do bad, you always get more energy and streams. You always have more to vent about, but it's great, obviously, when you look at just a pure team perspective and the Niners are winning games, so that's obviously great. But let's start off with the quarterback and Brock Purdy, who on Sunday had himself another good game, went 15 for 22, had 234 yards, and had two touchdowns and an interception. What was your overall thoughts on Purdy's performance on Sunday, and what's your overall thoughts on Purdy and how well he's been playing so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, great story. Obviously, when you go down to your third string quarterback, usually for most teams, that's game over, right? So, that you're packing it in, thinking about next season, and the fact that Purdy he has certain intangibles and is in a system with obviously a stacked roster on both sides, and he's taking full advantage of it. And props to him. Thankfully, it's a third stringer that in his head is a starting quarterback, and I think that's bodes well for the 49ers. Him as an actual quarterback, he obviously has limitations, which is why he was drafted where he was drafted. But as far as his mentality, as far as those intangibles, which you can't, necessarily always put on a stat sheet, dude is knocking it out of the park. And it's a awesome story. I know you said, like, for 49ers winning this many games in a row, it's tough for content creators. I would actually push back because 49ers are always giving, man. They're always giving us something, whether it's a trade for CMC, whether it's a third string quarterback going out here and, winning games against, the GOATs and, Tom Brady and so on and so forth. Like, there's always something to talk about. And it's a great story. I love that he's playing well. And, he's not doing anything that I would say is out of the ordinary. He's a better athlete than I thought. His mobility, I think, has helped him. And he's fairly accurate with the ball. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's making the right reads. And he threw that interception and forgot about it and went out and still, played really good after that. So these are things that you're looking for at a quarterback. Luckily, he's in a system where he doesn't need to be Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't need to be, Josh Allen. He just needs to be Brock Purdy and play within the system. And, the team has been showing out because of it. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy has been great so far this season, right? The confidence level of Brock Purdy coming in, you could tell that he's poised. As the game goes on, he gets more comfortable. And you look at just this game, look at this Washington Commanders game. Obviously, threw that interception, which I don't think that was his fault. I think that was Jawan Jennings' fault. Jawan
Sure.
Jennings should have just let the ball hit the floor, let it be an incompletion. He bobbled it up and it became picked off. But I mean, Brock Purdy, bounced back after that, threw that deep pass to George Kittle. Brock Purdy was doing his thing, and you could tell that Brock Purdy's poised, he's comfortable, and he makes some really nice throws. Like, I mean, that pass to George Kittle, the first play of the game against the Commanders, the first offensive play, there's pass rush was coming, and he finds Brandon Ayuk. And he, sidearms it to Brandon Ayuk. The Niners pick up 9 yards. That's a drive extender, right? Whereas a lot of
Hmm.
quarterbacks, that might have taken a sack, and that potentially could have ended the drive on the first play because if you lose a certain amount of yards, it's harder to pick up that first down. But he extended the drive, and that's a drive extending play right there. Little throws like that, which Brock Purdy, the decision making, the way that he could process things, the way that he's accurate, the way that he doesn't obviously have the strongest arm, but he does what you need him to do, and he executes so well that at a young age, what he's able to do is it's definitely impressive, and that's all the Niners really need out of Brock Purdy. Shanahan will scheme receivers open for you. Shanahan will make life easy for you, and this is the way that this Niners offense has so many weapons with the running game and obviously CMC and the offensive weapons. All you really have to do is get the ball to your playmakers, be accurate, make the right decisions, and find the open guy. And for the most part, and not turn over the football. And for the most part, Purdy's been able to do that in all the games that he's been playing so far, and that's why the Niners have been had so much success and have won, with Purdy. And that's why this offense has honestly looked so good with Purdy, because Purdy hasn't made mistakes. And he's also making, one or two deep passes and making that big play, every single game. So Purdy has done really well so far, and credit to him.
Yeah, and I mean, he's the accuracy and the timing is, I guess, really good, because if you notice, I mean, he is getting explosive plays, but it's a lot of yak. And obviously, we know that this team is stacked with players that are able to, get yards after the catch. But a lot of that has to do with the quarterback putting them in the right position. And, Purdy's doing that. I think Jimmy Ward talked about it after the game this week, where that was something that Purdy was working on all offseason or all, training camp when he was, the scout team quarterback. He would still just focus on timing plays. And, now he got the opportunity. It's paying off. And you're seeing guys like, obviously Kittle's started to play much better when Purdy is there. He's getting an opportunity to showcase what he could do in the passing game. And even a guy like Ayuk, now that Debo's down, still having very solid games and, getting those yards after the catch and, scoring touchdowns. He didn't in this last game, but, in previous games, scoring touchdowns. So it's great to see that the offense hasn't taken steps back because Purdy's been able to do exactly what we need him to do. And I would say even a little bit more. Like I said, his mobility, his pocket awareness, to me is something that was unexpected. I think that's one thing that I look at and I'm like, wow, I didn't know he had that in him.
Yep, and usually when you make the transition to a backup quarterback, when your starter obviously goes down, the transition obviously isn't as smooth. But with Purdy, look at with Purdy, the transition it's almost like Purdy's been the starter this whole entire year, and this is his first year in the league. Obviously, we all know the story of Mr. Irrelevant, you drafted the last pick of the draft, and then to come in and play so well. And I think part of that is because Purdy has had 4 years of college experience. You look at Purdy, obviously played at a D1 school in Iowa State, has 4 years of college experience. That definitely helps. But for what Purdy has done so far, I mean, it's really impressive. Not turning over the football, doing, enough and doing a little bit more. Like you said, obviously, that some of the deep passes, some of the nice throws that he makes, obviously getting Kittle involved more. He's kind of rejuvenated Kittle in the passing game. You've seen Kittle the last two games have, 2+ touchdowns, have 93 yards last game, 100 yards. So Kittle's definitely getting involved more while Brock Purdy's under center, but Brock Purdy has done a phenomenal job so far.
Absolutely.
Moving on, I mean, this defense, obviously, the Commanders, against the Commanders, the defense obviously wasn't as lights out as they've been this whole entire season. But what were your thoughts on the defense on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, look, people don't give credit to Mr. Heineke, man. That dude is a baller, right? So no, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, definitely they didn't look as dominant, but they looked dominant where they needed to, right? They on fourth down, they made some really clutch plays to end drives. Obviously there was the goal line stand that they made to keep them out of the end zone. And the Commanders, for the most part, were able to move the ball, in certain situations. But the 49ers defense made plays when they needed it to. Jimmy Ward with that great interception, changed the course of things. Like, they still, even though we're like, oh, the defense had a terrible game or had one of their worst games, they still held the Commanders to like 21 points, which is not crazy, so it's just and they're playing a team that was desperate, right? The Commanders are fighting for a playoff position, fighting for a playoff role. But my question, the thing that kind of is like, was anything exposed? I think that's like the biggest thing to look at. Okay, is there something that happened in this game where other teams that are maybe a little bit better, have better quarterbacks, have better players? Is there stuff that can be exposed? And I think secondary wise, it seems like these quicker, younger receivers can, still are a problem for some of the secondary. Obviously, Hufunga, Pro Bowl player, amazing, possible All Pro as well with the way he's playing. He does struggle though in coverage especially when it comes to faster receivers. Jahan Dotson had a great game, right? And he's the speed receiver over there for the Commanders. So I think that's still something that is a little bit of an Achilles heel for the 49ers. If they do have like a speed receiver there, like that can be an issue. But overall scheme of things, they're still able to play that bend, don't break style. And especially if this offense could continue to average the type of points that they've been able to average since CMC was traded there, I think that they still have a really good shot. And I still think this defense is, the best defense there. But that is an Achilles heel. I think that if there's like one of those quick, fast receivers, they tend to have, solid games. But it hasn't led to necessarily the 49ers not being able to win. So,
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this game in particular, the defense had a human-like game. And what I mean by that is this defense has been dominant so season. This defense has been dominating this whole entire season where, the type of game that they had on Sunday, you're like, "Whoa, like what happened?" right? Because the standards of what this defense has been doing this whole entire season. I mean, this defense, we've seen them allow 0 points in the second half, multiple games this year. We've seen obviously the secondary do their thing. We've seen the pass rush do their thing. We've seen this defense dominate this whole entire year. So obviously, what happened against the Commanders, you're like, whoa, what happened this game? But the defense had a human-like game. It obviously wasn't their best game of the season. But the thing about it is that the defense made plays when it mattered. They made the stops when it mattered. You look at the 4th and goal, they made the stop. You look at that 4th and 1, they made stops when it mattered. It wasn't their best game of the season, but when you needed a play from the defense, when the defense had to make a stop, they did that. So obviously, I still think this Niners defense is the best defense in the NFL. There's no debate about it. But this defense had a human-like game, and it's gonna happen at a certain point. You can't expect your defense to come in every single game and dominate and have a dominating performance every single game. Like it's not gonna happen. And the defense had a human-like game, and I definitely think this defense will bounce back. And you mentioned it, the Achilles heel with the secondary. I mean, the secondary, obviously losing Emmanuel Mosley, that was a big loss. But Diamond Lenore and some of these young guys, against these speedy receivers, sometimes you will see them get beat. Sometimes you will see them get burned. And that is something that happened in the Commanders game. Obviously, Jahan Dotson went off. Obviously, Terry McLaurin had his stats. But that is definitely an Achilles heel. And Charvarius Ward, I mean, the thing about Charvarius Ward is he's been great. I mean, last week against DK Metcalf, but Charvarius Ward also has had not many major injuries, but he's had some slight injuries, obviously coming off the concussion protocol. So I wouldn't say he's at 100% right now. But that the secondary definitely didn't look good against the Commanders and Talanoa Hufanga. I mean, Talanoa Hufanga has been great this whole entire year. Obviously, getting that Pro Bowl nod. But he struggled in coverage against the Commanders as well. I think he'll bounce back, but he's still a young player, so you got to give him time. He'll make his mistakes. He's definitely played better than a lot of us had expected coming into the season. He's definitely, in my opinion, exceeded a lot of people's expectations. But he will make his fair share of mistakes. He's still young. He's obviously still developing. He still has this is his first year as a starting safety. So in the NFL, so he'll make his fair share of mistakes, but I definitely think he'll learn and bounce back from them.
yeah, and overall, the defense is playing to their strength when they force teams to just pass, right? Because obviously the strength of this defense is the pass rush. We saw, Bosa break his record in this game as far as sacks in a season, getting 2 sacks in the game. So, where this secondary has struggles with maybe the speedy, quick receivers, they do amazing against just the prototypical big, wide receivers, the big name wide receivers and things like that. And they're so elite when it comes to the secondary, when it comes to run stopping, that they force teams to be one dimensional. And when I would much rather, like, if a team is only passing the ball, obviously there's going to be more opportunities for the secondary to be exposed, or at least look like they're exposed, right? All the touchdowns are going to come from the passing game because all they're doing is passing, is throwing the ball. So that's the way you want this game to play out. You want it to be where the opposing team has to drop back and throw the ball over and over and over again, because that's going to be the strength of this defense, the pass rush, and the linebacker, all that kind of stuff. Being able, D'Amico Ryans then could get get pretty intricate with his schemes and rush schemes and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's what we're going to have to expect. If opposing offenses have any success against the 49ers, it's going to be in the pass game, just because, their rush defense is so elite at this point.
Yep, you're definitely right about that. Obviously we talked about Brock Purdy, the first topic of this show. But Brock Purdy, we've talked about, obviously a lot of Niners fans have praised Brock Purdy. But going into next offseason, I mean, there's been a little bit of conversation about what's going to happen with Trey Lance. Obviously, you invested 3 first-round picks into Trey Lance. Everybody expected him to be the future of the franchise. And then he obviously got hurt week 2. And then, Jimmy Garoppolo comes in. He starts playing well. That was a whole issue and this whole controversy in the offseason. Is he going to re-sign? They're going to let him go? What's going to happen? And now Brock Purdy comes in, and Brock Purdy has been playing relatively well. But I want to ask you this question. Not necessarily Lance versus Purdy, but if you were the 49ers head coach next year, how would you handle this quarterback situation with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy? How would you handle it? Would you let them both get an equal opportunity to compete for the job? Would you start Brock Purdy depending on what he does this season and in the postseason? Would you start Trey Lance because you obviously gave up so many assets for him? What would you do if you were the 49ers head coach?
Great question. So let's put this in a little bit of perspective. So Trey Lance, he hasn't done anything that makes you think that he's not capable of being a starter in this league. Like, it's not that he was playing terrible and that's why he's not playing right now. No, he had a season-ending injury that is the reason why he's not playing. And for everything, Jimmy came in and played well. I mean, the team was still struggling till one move was made, and that was CMC got traded, right? And so the 49ers are 8-1 since the CMC trade. And not to mention, Amin, to quantify what the change of CMC has done. In the games that CMC wasn't a 49er, the 49ers were averaging right around 20 points per game. In the games that CMC has been a 49er, they're averaging over 28 points per game. And that's with Jimmy as quarterback, Purdy as quarterback. That's with or without Debo. So to sit here and just be like, the quarterback is the reason why this offense is playing the way that it is, I think is just a little bit naive, because the one constant in this offense is CMC. The 49ers have a bona fide all-pro level running back for the first time in the Shanahan era. And in a run-first team, when you have that much talent at the running back position, it changes the way that your offense looks. And that has been quantified as over 8 points per game since CMC has been there. So to go back to the Lance and Purdy conversation, I think Purdy is a great story. I think Purdy has done enough to warrant that there's a QB competition next offseason. I don't think that you could just sit there and be like, Lance is for sure the starter. Purdy has played well. He's obviously caught the media by storm. He's the feel-good story. So I don't think that unless something drastically happens in the next part of the season and in through the playoffs where Purdy just falls off a cliff, which I don't intend to happen, because I don't think that he's necessarily doing anything out of the ordinary to where he's just going to fall off. It seems like he's good enough of a player to succeed in this offense. But I think that's the key, is let's not forget the offense that he's in, right? This is the same offense where Jimmy Garoppolo looked like the best he's ever looked like. So I would assume that if Lance is in this offense, with he's handing the ball off to CMC instead of Jeff Wilson Jr. or Jermichael Hasty or the people that he was handing off the ball to, and and I just think that that Lance would be looking pretty unstoppable as well. And the truth about it is, Lance, as far as just the physical attributes, I mean, to Brock Purdy, it's not even close. Lance is bigger, his arm's stronger, he's more mobile, he's faster. Purdy's more accurate, I would say. And at this point, Purdy has shown the ability to stay healthy and be able to play. That's one thing that Lance hasn't been able to show. So I think that if I'm the coach and I'm Kyle Shanahan this offseason, regardless of if I win a Super Bowl this year or I'm out after the week 1 or whatever, I think Purdy has done enough to warrant a QB competition this offseason. And I think Lance has to go out there and win the job, which I think that he's more than capable of. And I'm happy as a 49er fan that my QB room is 2 quarterbacks that I know the team could win with. So that's kind of more. It's like it's like a good problem to have where you have 2 capable quarterbacks. But if I'm hedging or not even if you ask me right now who the quarterback is week 1, 2023, I think it's Trey Lance.
Yep. When you look at this whole Brock Purdy, Trey Lance thing, obviously you gave up assets for Trey Lance, and I still find it funny that people have this whole argument that the Niners should have drafted Mac Jones at number 3, or they made the mistake at drafting Trey Lance at number 3, and I agree with the Niners pick of drafting Trey Lance, because when you give up that many assets, you obviously want a quarterback like a Trey Lance, like a Justin Fields, who could be your franchise guy for the next 10 years. Whereas if the Niners potentially drafted Mac Jones at 3, Mac Jones' ceiling wasn't really high. He had the lowest ceiling out of the other 2 quarterbacks. And what you got, from him in Alabama, you probably would have gotten, with the Niners. And it might have been better because the Niners are obviously a talented team. But, I don't think Mac Jones has the potential of being a top 10 quarterback in this league. Whereas Trey Lance and Justin Fields, I think they do. So that's why the Niners went out and drafted, Trey Lance, where they went out and drafted him. Obviously, they could have selected Fields, but they decided not to. When you look at this whole Trey Lance Brock Purdy thing in specific, Trey Lance obviously hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy, which is not really his fault. I mean, it's not, obviously, injuries do happen. You can't really control that. But if I was Kyle Shanahan, here's the way I would play it. Regardless of what happens, right? Regardless of, even if you don't win a Super Bowl, I think the way that Brock Purdy has been playing, and if you win, one out of the 2 next games, or you win a playoff game, or regardless, I think Brock Purdy deserves a shot at competing for the spot job next year. And Trey Lance has to go into training camp next year and has to fight, with Brock Purdy, and has to compete in order to gain that spot. Because Brock Purdy, obviously, I wouldn't give Brock Purdy all the credit for what this offense has been doing, because obviously the addition of CMC has been huge. And you mentioned they were 8-1. And that one loss was against Kansas City, and that was the first 2 days that Christian McCaffrey got there. And obviously he wasn't really he was learning the playbook still. So obviously Christian McCaffrey didn't have a full grasp of the playbook. Obviously, being in San Francisco for 2 days and then having to play in a game on Sunday. So obviously that one loss came against the Chiefs. But ever since Christian McCaffrey's had, a full week in this offense and had time to grasp the playbook, this offense has been great. And Christian McCaffrey has been averaging over 100 yards, averaging, a touchdown per game. Christian McCaffrey has been doing phenomenally in this offense. It's been a huge help for not only Jimmy Garoppolo once he came, but for Brock Purdy as well. So obviously he deserves a lot of credit for that. And it's not just Brock Purdy, doing what he's been doing. He obviously deserves some credit as well, but it's not just only Brock Purdy or only Jimmy Garoppolo. I think a lot of it has to do with what Christian McCaffrey has been able to do and how he impacts this offense, especially also with the absence of Deebo Samuel. But if I was, Kyle Shanahan, I would let both these quarterbacks compete for the starting spot in 2023. I think Brock Purdy, the way that he's played, he's shown you that he's a capable enough quarterback of being your starter. He's shown you that he can execute this offense. He's shown you that he doesn't make, boneheaded plays. He showed you so far, obviously. Now we'll see what he does in the playoffs, but he's shown you so far that, he makes good decisions. He's accurate. He's an accurate thrower of the football. So I would give both of these guys an opportunity go into next year's training camp, give them both opportunities to compete, and whoever does end up, having a better training camp or showing me more, I would let them start on week 1. And then obviously, once week 1 comes along, if any of them get hurt, let's say I start Trey Lance week 1 and Trey Lance, God forbid, gets hurt, then I will put in Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy has a couple of games where he's struggling next year and he's struggling and we're not winning games, I would give Trey Lance that opportunity and let him come in. But obviously, it's a good problem to have when you have two quarterbacks that you feel are capable of leading this team, and two quarterbacks that you feel can execute this offense. And that's a great problem to have if you're the 49ers.
Yeah, and I mean, I put up a tweet today kind of talking about the CMC effect on this offense. And, I tweeted out, the Brock Purdy story is great. He does deserve praise. And I mentioned what I just talked about. The 49ers have been averaging over 8 points more per game since CMC has been there. And that's been whomever's at quarterback, whomever's at receiver. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as CMC's there, this offense looks good. And a lot of people that are big Brock Purdy fans are all up and down that tweet being like, you're just trying to discredit Brock Purdy and you're trying to move the goalposts and all this kind of stuff. And it's not that. I think Brock Purdy is playing really, really well. The question is, if Lance is in the same position and healthy, do we think that this offense doesn't look the same? Because this offense looked the same when Jimmy was there. They were still putting up 30 points plus per game. You know what I mean? And yeah, maybe George Kittle is getting more into the offense, but you would assume that when, usually what do we always say about young quarterbacks? Their safety net is what?
The tight end, yeah.
The tight end. So
you
obviously,
saw it with Nick Mullins, you saw it with CJ Beathard.
Exactly. And as you get more and more confident, then you're making more reads, you're throwing to, different receivers and all that kind of stuff. So me trying to put in perspective that this offense changed when CMC was there, and the stats back it up, and all of that, and the winning streak backs it up, isn't to detract away from Brock Purdy. It's not saying that Brock Purdy isn't capable, and he might be the starting quarterback in 2023. But the real question is, do you believe Brock Purdy is better than Trey Lance? And, there's an argument to be said, because we haven't seen enough out of Trey Lance necessarily to be like, hey, this is the proof. We are seeing, Brock Purdy go out and play really, really well. So for people that are going to argue Brock Purdy is better than Trey Lance, they have a more solid argument at this point, because they're going to be showing actual game film and tape and all this kind of stuff. Whereas with Trey Lance, it's more about potential still. So, but I think in the offseason, you gotta have that answered. And that's why I think, like we're both saying, it needs to be a QB competition. My guess is that it's going to be Trey Lance, just because I think Trey Lance has everything Brock Purdy has plus more. I would love to have Brock Purdy's mentality in Trey Lance. I think that's one thing that Trey Lance is lacking, just like the overall confidence that Brock Purdy exudes and the decisiveness that Brock Purdy has. I think he's better at Trey Lance than Trey Lance at that. But as far as arm strength, speed, all that kind of stuff, give Trey Lance the opportunity to play in this offense with the weapons that Brock Purdy's playing with. And I would expect more explosive plays than we're even seeing right now. And that's just maybe my bias, because I really like Trey Lance. But it's not to detract against Brock Purdy. Trey Lance as the starter, Jimmy as the starter, Brock as the starter. We're seeing, as long as CMC's there, this team is going to, and the defense is playing the way that they're playing, yep, this team is going to win. So I'm not trying to take away from any of these quarterbacks. I'm just trying to put in perspective what exactly is going on with this offense.
Yep, and I mean, with Christian McCaffrey, you look at it like he's having a touchdown pretty much every single game, right? That automatically adds you another 7, 8 points, And let's look at Christian McCaffrey's stats. Obviously, had a touchdown against Washington, had 100 yards against Seattle, had another touchdown against Tampa Bay, and this is not even including his passing, his receiving touchdowns, right? So CMC,
he's already been thrown a touchdown this
and
season.
He's even thrown a touchdown this season, right? He's pretty much running back, receiver, pass catching back, quarterback. Christian McCaffrey has done it all. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, in a way, has kind of been the Deebo Samuel in this offense, because last year, Deebo played a huge role in this offense. And a lot of the times when Deebo would get going and Deebo would have, big games, this offense in general looked better and they would put up more points and they would be more efficient. And it's been the same thing with CMC ever since the addition of CMC. This offense has looked more efficient. And you're right, it's not to discredit, Brock Purdy or Jimmy Garoppolo. But with the addition of CMC has a huge role in this offense, and he's played a huge part in this offense's success ever since he got here. And obviously, when you look at the win-loss record, I mean that obviously has a huge show in winning 8 games in a row and not losing any ever since Christian McCaffrey has been a 49er. So Christian McCaffrey has been huge, and even just for a quarterback, when you're like Jimmy Garoppolo or Brock Purdy, a guy like Christian McCaffrey's your check down, but he's a lethal check down. He
Mhm.
could, break a cup if you dump it off to him as a 2 yard pass dump off, he could break tackles and pick you up a first down, or he can give you a first down by breaking tackles if you throw him a little check down pass, he could pick up a first down or pick up an extra 15 yards, yards after catch. Christian McCaffrey can do a lot in this offense. So Christian McCaffrey, I mean, not to discredit Brock Purdy or Jimmy Garoppolo, because I think both of those guys obviously before Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, played well. I think this was his best season outside of 2017. I would say those 5 games in 2017, I thought Jimmy Garoppolo was playing his best football, some of his best football that we've seen. He looked more comfortable. The same thing with Brock Purdy. He's been playing really well. He's made all the right, he's made good decisions. He's accurate with the football. He's decisive. But Christian McCaffrey has definitely played a huge, role and has had a huge impact in the 49ers success offensively and just as a team and how they're winning football games.
Absolutely.
Moving on to, this is not a 49ers news, but Nathaniel Hackett got fired this morning, and Christmas
Mhm.
Day was not so, Christmassy for the Denver Broncos yesterday. There's a Broncos kid at my school. Shout out to him. Every single week the Broncos lose a game, I'm there. I'm like, what happened? Broncos country, let's ride. I go and bother him every single time. He's just like, get out of here. Like, I know why are you making fun of me? I know my team sucks, but man, the Broncos have not looked good. I remember doing a stream before the season started, and I was like, you know what, with Russell Wilson and this Broncos team and this Broncos defense, they could potentially win the AFC West. I obviously still picked the Chiefs. I picked the Chiefs. I picked the Chiefs, and I said the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West. But I wouldn't be surprised if even over the Chargers, the Broncos won the AFC West this year. And I don't think I've ever been wrong, and I don't think I've ever been that wrong in my life and missed that badly on a take in my entire life. I mean, yikes! The Broncos have looked not just bad offensively; they've looked horrendous. And the defense, obviously, outside of yesterday, the defense has had some really good games this year. The defense has, for the most part, I think this defense is pretty good, but offensively, they've just been a dumpster fire. What do you think of this Nathaniel Hackett move? Do you think they should have fired him? Do you think they should have given him another year? Do you think it was the right decision?
I mean, the owner over there is money's not a thing. No, money's no issue, right? So I don't think he's really worried about the financial impact of a move like this. I think it's tough for any first year coach to get fired, not even through his first full season. You know what I mean? I'll be honest. I mean, other than just how the team is playing, I don't know about what's going on in the locker room. If there's like stuff going on, because I don't follow the Broncos that closely. But you weren't the only one that thought the world of what Denver looked like on paper once they traded for Russell Wilson. I would say the majority of people looked at it and said Russell Wilson with the defense and the receivers that they had and the running backs and all of the all of the
Talent.
team around him, caliber of players around him. You thought this team was definitely going to be a problem. Then you bring in Nathaniel Hackett, who did really well over there in Green Bay as an offensive coordinator, has a great pedigree from his dad and the West Coast offense and all this kind of stuff. You would think that, okay, well, Russ played well in Seattle, but he always had a defensive minded coach. So now he has an offensive minded coach with weapons and all this kind of stuff. It's his team. And, there's not going to be, whose team is it type of deal. You thought that, hey, the world was their oyster, and it hasn't planned out that way. Right. And is it now I guess the question is Russell Wilson playing this well because Nathaniel Hackett is calling the plays, or is Russell Wilson just this player now? And I think the truth, and maybe it's because maybe it's because I'm a 49er fan, so F Russell Wilson, right? He's always going to be a Seahawk to me. I think there was already Russell Wilson wasn't playing well, even at the end of his Seattle career. I think it's been multiple years now that Russell Wilson hasn't looked good, and I think we're going to just see, no matter who the quarter or who the coach comes in, if this is a let Russ cook type of offense, I think it's going to struggle. And at what point do you blame the quarterback, or do you keep blaming these coaches, right? I think even in Seattle, a bunch of offensive coordinators and QB coaches were getting fired because Russ wasn't looking very good, or he wasn't happy, and all this kind of stuff. Now he obviously got a head coach. Well, not him, but he's the quarterback, and a head coach got fired even before the full first season. What's the common denominator? To me, it's Russ. Are we going to continue to say all of the coaches that Russ comes with just don't know how to coach him? Like, I don't know.
I will push back a little bit on the Russell Wilson thing, because you look at Russell Wilson outside of his last year in Seattle, his 2020 year, he was in the MVP conversation a little bit with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, early on in the year, threw for 40 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. 2019 had another 30 plus touchdown season, 5 interceptions. And 2018 as well, 30 plus touchdowns, and not double digit interceptions. But when you look at to transition to the Broncos, I thought, Russell Wilson, with a lot of people, like you said, would have looked good. Obviously, with an offensive minded coach, obviously with the weapons, that defense, they obviously went out and got Randy Gregory in free agency. You already had Bradley Chubb, who's coming, he's healthy this upcoming year. And obviously, was one of those people that had really high hopes for this Broncos team, but it just hasn't panned out. And I think part of that is obviously, Russell Wilson not getting used to this offensive system, going into a new offensive system. It's not really worked well, and it's not really fitting his play style the way that Nathaniel Hackett's running this offense. And I didn't honestly expect it. Neither did I think, not a lot of people did expect it, because obviously Nathaniel Hackett is an offensive minded coach. And when you're playing with a defensive minded coach for the last couple of years, and even with, if you look at Seattle just as a team, Seattle obviously has, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but Seattle as a team, I mean, the defense is not that great. The offensive line before, when his last couple of seasons, when he was, throwing 30 plus touchdowns, the offensive line wasn't great. Russell Wilson was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league. So when you come to this, when Russell Wilson did get traded to the Broncos, and you have, a decent offensive line, talent at the receiver position, you have a talented defense, and you have all these, all this talent everywhere, I expected it to succeed. I expected this team to succeed, and it obviously hasn't gone that way. And it's tough, obviously, as a first year coach, because obviously with the new quarterback, your first time as a head coach, obviously it hasn't went well. And money's definitely not an issue for, obviously, the Broncos owner, and the Broncos ownership is not obviously an issue for them. And we'll see. I think if you bring in another coach next year, and Russell Wilson continues to struggle, I think then you could say, you know what? It might be Russell Wilson. You can't blame coaches. I think Russell Wilson is just done. The issue with getting rid of Russell Wilson, and I think Nathaniel Hackett was the easy, fire, because when you look at this team and how badly they've been struggling on the field, this team has had issues even off the field. You look at, running backs, are, you look at some of the players, and, arguing on the sidelines with each other. I think yesterday they had another argument, and one of the offensive linemen pushed, the Broncos backup quarterback, and they had arguments on the sideline. I mean, this whole team, not only off the field, I mean, not only on the field, the performance hasn't been great, but even off the field, this team has had some issues. And there's been games where, you see players getting into, arguments with each other, and they've had some, interactions, not so nice interactions with each other. But Nathaniel Hackett, in my opinion, was the easy, scapegoat, because Russell Wilson, if you get rid of Russell Wilson, I mean, that's a huge, hit to your cap. I don't know what it is exactly. I remember there was a comment from Korean 49er about that, but getting rid of Russell Wilson, I don't think it would have been the nicest, on your wallet financially. So obviously Nathaniel Hackett was the easy, scapegoat. So going into next year, you bring in another coach, and if Russell Wilson continues to struggle, and this offense and this team continues to not, win football games and continues to lose, then I think, what, it might be Russell Wilson. You can't blame the coaches. But this year, I think obviously we still don't know if it was, Russell Wilson or Nathaniel Hackett, but Nathaniel Hackett was the easier, was the scapegoat, and he was the easier, thing to let go if I was the Broncos.
I mean, look, Geno Smith.
He's looked great.
And
Oh,
he basically has the same team, if not a worse team than Russ had last season,
yep.
because at least Russ had more consistent running game last season. They've been in and out with injuries of their running backs. So I don't know, man. You're right. It's fair to say like the year before. I mean, it's maybe been 1 year. I said maybe the last few seasons, but maybe it's just the last season. But there's been a different decline, and maybe the stats in 2020 season that you mentioned, they did look good, but there was still you started to see Russ struggling more, is what I'm saying. So like, there's and look, Russ has been in the league for quite some time. We don't expect him to keep getting better. Only even Tom Brady isn't looking as good as he used to look. So time is, Father Time is undefeated. So I would only assume Russ is going to look worse. He's not going to look better. But how bad is bad? You know what I mean? Like, we'll see. To me, I think that Russ is going to be just an average quarterback at best at this point on. And, it doesn't matter who the coach is. Can Russ play well enough for a team to win? I would say, yeah. We're seeing it. You don't have to have a superstar quarterback for a team to be good. You have to have a great defense, which I think Denver does have a great defense. And you have to have a quarterback that could play the game without making mistakes. Now, the question is Russ's ego, right? That's something that doesn't get spoken about. All of his teammates have gone out. There's not too many teammates that come out and say, hey, I love Russ and, he was great and all this kind of stuff. Most of them are like, hey, it's much better when Russ isn't here because of that ego. And, I don't know if it's a rumor or something. I mean, maybe because, you're younger, you're probably into this stuff more than me,
No,
but
there's players that said, I think it was Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman. They said the only way we could contact Russ was by calling his agent. We couldn't get to him directly. He would never answer our text, never pick up our phone call.
yeah,
The way we could contact him was by.
those are true. But my question to you is, there's a rumor that in the Denver locker room, he said that nobody could play Future. Is that true?
I have no idea.
So
Honestly, I have
I don't
no
know if it was true. I don't know because the social media just be making
idea.
jokes every now and then. But if it's true that he said that, hey, no Future, no songs with Future in it, and all that kind of stuff, I could see where a team would be like, yo, man, like, what are you doing right now? Like, so I don't know. Like, it even seems like a
This
guy
was
like
funny. Did you see this? Did you see this? Patrick was clowning on SpongeBob. He was like, "Oh
no.
no, interception!" It was hilarious.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that if Russ has this ego where he still thinks he's the center of attention, he's the guy, and all this kind of stuff, I don't know if he's that. I don't think he's that dude anymore. It's kind of like you see these players that in the NBA, you see it more often where they're superstars. Like you see it with another Russell Westbrook, right, where he used to be superstar, obviously, one of the great point guards as far as his ability to average triple doubles and carry his team to victory, but he's not that guy anymore. And if you continue to think that you're that guy, it can really hurt you in your reputation and your ability to like be on a team, right? He's been traded so many times since he's had that decline. Now he's starting to play that sixth man role, and he's starting to build his cloud up a little bit more. And if Russ can understand that, hey, maybe I'm not the same player that every single week you can put the game on my back and I'm going to be able to carry this team to victory. I need to utilize my team. I need to utilize the rush game. I need to play within a system and be able to be coached by these coaches. And every now and then when I need to, I can, maybe go back into that well and win a game with just my arm. But if he wants the ball to just be let Russ cook every single week, I think that ship has sailed.
Yep, and that's something like I realized about playing like sports this year is that like I'll have teammates on my basketball team that will when we do bad they'll yell or they'll get upset and then and like the thing with Russell Wilson is that with that ego. if you're playing well and you're playing well and your performance on the football field is solid and you're doing what you're supposed to do, nobody can really, even if you do have that ego, nobody can really say much. And if you're calling out teammates and doing what Kyler Murray kind of was doing last season, I'm not saying Russell Wilson is doing that, but we don't know if he's doing that in the locker room. But when you have that ego and you're not performing well, I mean, you really can't, have that ego because you're not doing so great yourself. So if you're calling out teammates in the locker room, or you're dissing and throwing teammates under the bus while you're not performing well yourself, I mean, you can't really talk, Russ. Like, I mean, you can't, forget about what happened in 2018, 2019. That ego is a huge thing that Seattle teammates have been calling him out for ever since
Mm-hmm.
he came to the Broncos. I mean, there's a bunch of Seattle teammates that have been like, Russell Wilson has this huge ego. Things are better when Russ is not here. And you look at the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks for the most part, I think, have won the trade so far because Geno Smith has
Absolutely.
been great. Noah Fant has been doing his thing. I mean, Noah Fant obviously has had some good games for Seattle, and you still have a couple of first round picks. Seattle
It's going to be a top 3 pick.
has been a top 3 pick, and and you almost obviously I don't think Seattle's making the playoffs, but you won more games than the Broncos. You still have a top 3 pick, and Geno
And
Smith
a
has
top
been,
15.
yeah, and a top 15 pick. So, I mean, if you're Seattle, you're really happy at where you're at right now. Because I'll be
Yeah.
honest, right? I expected the Broncos to be doing better, but I didn't think Seattle won the trade. I was like, if this trade goes down, and I think this might be an even trade depending on who the Seattle drafts, but. I didn't think Seattle would win this trade definitely in year one. Like, indefinitely, I think
Right.
Seattle probably won this trade because you have a top 2 pick and you have a top 15 pick and you won 7+ games, which a lot of us, especially after Russell Wilson left, a lot of us didn't even have you winning more than 5. So
Right.
if I'm Seattle, I think Seattle probably won this trade even after, you know, the first year. Raphael says, "What's up?" I mean, the Dream and Suneil and everyone. What's up, Raphael? I haven't said what's up to the chat. I'm really bad. I apologize. I haven't said what's up to the chat. Me and Suneil have been so engaged in this conversation that I want to say what's up to the chat real quick. We have 49er Minded in here. What's up,
Bashar.
49er Minded? My guy Bashar, one of the best Niner intros in 49er land. Go check out 49er Minded if you haven't already. David McNew always shows up to the streams, always checks it out, always is in the chat. Definitely appreciate you, David McNew. We have Brian Culp in here, another moderator of the channel who always shows us support, always is in the chat. I appreciate you as well. We have E Kim, haven't seen him in a while. What's up, Korean 49er? Hope you're doing well, bro. Haven't seen you in a minute. Hope you're doing well, and hope you had a great Christmas. We have East Coast Red and Gold podcast. I went on their show on Wednesday. Go check out their channel. They're also another 49er, content create. They're also another 49er channel. They have a crew with Ty Alston. Obviously, Niner Jess. They have this whole crew where they talk about 49ers on Wednesdays. Go check them out if you haven't already. East Coast Red and Gold podcast. Go check it out. Type it up on your YouTube search bar. Go subscribe to their channel if you haven't already. And Raphael says, one last thing. Raphael says, I just subscribed to your channel. I really thought I was subbed already. No problem. At least you're here now. At least you're here now. I appreciate you for subscribing to the channel. At least you are here now to check out the stream. And I appreciate you for tuning in to this one as well. Last topic of the day. And if you're going to go out, you want to go out with a bang. Last topic of the day. Micah Parsons versus Nick Bosa. This whole debate that's been going on Twitter. You see, media channels talking about it. You see Emmanuel Acho, talking about it. Emmanuel Acho hasn't really hit lately on some of his takes. Tua Tagovailoa.
Right.
I
He
mean,
said Tua over
yeah,
Herbert.
Tua over Herbert.
He said Lance is a one-trick pony. Like,
He said Justin Herbert's a social media quarterback. Like, he said a lot
yeah.
of stuff. He's been saying a lot of stuff lately. But let's talk about it. Micah Parsons, phenomenal player. The Niners, if they stayed at 12, maybe could have drafted him. I mean, Micah Parsons. Can you imagine Micah Parsons with Nick Bosa on the same defense? I mean, what a nightmare that would be. Obviously, that didn't happen. I'm still happy to have Trey Lance, but
Mm-hmm.
this is a debate. This has been a debate. What side of the debate are you on? Suneil? Are you on the Micah Parsons? Are you on the Nick Bosa side?
So
What's
what
your
are we saying? Who is the better? Like, who would I rather have? Is that what the question is, or is it like
all right?
who should get Defensive Player of the Year this year?
Who I would say, obviously, I think if you were starting a team, who would you rather have? I don't know, who would you pick? Who would you pick if you were starting a
So
team?
here's
Who
the
would you rather
thing.
have?
Start so it changes when it comes to starting a team or it comes to for the 49ers, right?
If
So
you were
Micah
starting a
Parsons.
team, a brand new team, and you either could have Nick Bosa or Micah Parsons, who would you have? And be honest with your answer. Just be honest with your answer.
So I would say Micah Parsons.
I would agree with
And
you.
the reason why is obviously Micah Parsons could do more. He's right there in the top of the sack leaders, but he's a linebacker.
Yeah,
So he also could jump into coverage. He's, obviously, one of the leading tacklers in the league. Like, so he's just a more versatile player, because Bosa is just an edge rusher, right? Now, to say Bosa is just an edge rusher kind of minimizes how good of an edge rusher he is. Like, Bosa is insane as an edge rusher.
yeah,
For the 49ers, who would I rather have is Nick Bosa all day,
obviously,
every day. And
obviously.
because we have linebackers, we don't need Micah Parsons as a linebacker. We need a dominant edge rusher, which Nick Bosa is the most dominant edge rusher in the game right now, as he's the leader in sacks. And
Mhm.
that too, without his, partners in crime. Armstead has been gone most of the season. Kinlaw has been gone most of the season. Everybody else is kind of like backup level players that are in there. Ebicom has been gone most of the season. So it's like Nick Bosa's really been doing this as the primary guy without, anybody really there to necessarily quote unquote help him. So for me, for the 49ers, it's all day, every day Nick Bosa. But if the question is, who would I want to start my defense with? Well, now I'm thinking I need to find players that can do the most at whatever positions they have. So Michael Parsons, just now, if Nick Bosa was a linebacker, could he be as good as Michael Parsons? I don't know, but he's not in that position. So I would say if I'm starting a team, it'd be Micah Parsons. But for the 49ers, for sure, Bosa over Parsons all day.
Yep, I could not have said it better myself. I mean, if I was starting a team, obviously I would want Micah Parsons. And Nick Bosa is great, but Micah Parsons obviously is a linebacker, and what he does as as a edge rusher. I mean, Micah Parsons is phenomenal, an all world talent with the speed, the agility, the strength. I mean, Micah Parsons is a phenomenal player. So if I was starting a football team, and I wanted, if I had the opportunity to pick one of these players, I would want Micah Parsons. If I was the Niners, though, on the other hand, and I was the Niners head coach, I would want Nick Bosa any day of the week. Nick Bosa is a dominant edge rusher, and I want to throw out some stats for you. In the last 4 games, Micah Parsons had 1 sack, 3 QB hits, 12 tackles, while Nick Bosa has had 6 sacks, 12 QB hits, 15 tackles, and 1 forced fumble. Nick Bosa is a beast, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to discredit Micah Parsons in any way, because Micah Parsons is a phenomenal player. But Nick Bosa is just, Nick Bosa for this Niners defense, he's just so dominant. I mean, you look at that Seattle game, like there was like they would call ticky tacky fouls on him all the time in that game, but like Nick Bosa was like driving the edge rusher into Geno Smith's lap, like he was wreaking havoc. And even though he didn't get a sack on that specific play, Nick Bosa just dominates. Like Nick Bosa dominates. And you look at this Niners defensive line. Eric Armstead has missed some time. Javon Kinlaw has missed the majority of this year. It's really primarily been Nick Bosa doing so much and really dominating and being, a one man defensive line in a way. Nick Bosa's just been so great for this Niners defense. Nick Bosa should win Defensive Player of the Year. And I think overall, I think if I was the 49ers, who would I rather have between these two players? I would rather have Nick Bosa. Now, obviously, if I was starting a team, who would I rather have? I would rather have Micah Parsons. But both of these guys are great. Both of these guys are, phenomenal players, and they're going to be phenomenal players for, the rest of their careers. So,
I
we,
have a
we,
question for you, Amin, because
go ahead.
and it's obviously it's just a fun question to ask, because if they did end up, let's say the 49ers did end up drafting Michael Parsons, right? Would he even be a linebacker on this team, or would he just be a all time just he'd be playing on the D line?
He'd be
Like,
playing on the D line.
I agree. I
You
think he'd
can't.
just be the.
Especially when you look at. Sorry to cut you off, but when you look at this linebacker core. I mean, you have Aziz, you have Greenlaw, and you have Fred Warner. I mean, we
Mhm.
talk about this linebacker core. I think in my opinion, right, and a lot of Niners fans' opinions, the best in the league, the best linebacker core in the league. So,
Hmm.
right, if you use Parsons, and the way I would look at it is, what if I utilize Micah Parsons, what would benefit my team the most? Him being used as a linebacker or him being used as an edge rusher, right? Him being used on the
Hmm.
defensive line. And if I was the 49ers or I was D'Amico, I would use him on the defensive line because I think that could benefit my team more and have a better impact on my team and have, a better chance of my defense being successful drive to drive than if Micah Parsons was to play linebacker, because we already have three great linebackers in Aziz, Greenlaw, and Fred Warner. So that's the way that I would look at it, is I would use him on the defensive line because I think that would impact my defense the most and that would help my defense the most.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting if Micah Parsons only had to focus on rushing the passer, how his numbers would look, right? So
Yeah.
that
And
that
with
would be
Nick Bosa
interesting
on
to
the
see.
other side, and with Nick Bosa on the
Exactly.
other side.
Yeah, Nick Bosa, Armstead, like that would be ridiculous, right? So, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you look at Samson Ebicom when he was with the Rams, he was a linebacker as well. Like he played linebacker and edge rushed, and then when he comes to the 49ers, he's just strictly just a pass rusher. So I think Michael Parsons would be the same. Um, the defensive line would be insane as well. So it's going to be interesting this draft because we don't have any first or second round picks. I think it's going to be three positions that are going to be drafted, or along the defensive line, offensive line, and corner. I think are the three positions that are going to be drafted this off season. But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yep. Well, that's all the topics that we have for today. I appreciate everybody in the chat, all of you that tuned in today. I appreciate it. 49er Minded, Cowboy Angel, David McNew, Chris Smith, Raphael 5629ers, everybody who tuned in. I appreciate the support. It's obviously a more engaging show and a more enjoyable show when you have people in the chat commenting their questions, commenting, their opinions and their thoughts on the 49ers. Definitely makes it a more engaging and a more enjoyable show. Appreciate everybody in the chat. I appreciate you for joining me, Suneil. If you haven't already, go check out Suneil's channel. My Indian brother. Go check out my Indian brother's channel. The link is in the description, at SoReal Sports Talk. Go check him out on Twitter. Go give him a follow on Twitter as well. Both the links are in the description to his YouTube and his Twitter. Go check that out. And go subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Trying to get to 700 subscribers. Haven't been really consistent with my streaming. I'm trying to, get back to that, hopefully. Haven't been the most consistent, but trying to put out more content. Obviously busy with school and, winter breaks obviously now upon me upon us, so that I'm gonna be going on vacation next week, so I won't be home obviously to stream, but definitely trying to put out more consistent uploads. I apologize for that, but we have a lot of great Niner content creators. So even if you don't get it from me, you get a lot of great Niner content creators out there. Jesse, Grant, Rob Shu. We have a bunch of great Niner content creators out there. Jack Hammer, obviously Suneil is another one. We have a lot of great 49er content creators out there. But that basically wraps up the show. Any final thoughts, Suneil?
Nah, man. Just want to wish everybody happy holidays. Hope everybody had a great Christmas and got to spend time with loved ones, eat some good food, and all that kind of stuff. And if we don't talk before that, very happy New Year, and wish everybody success in the new year to come, man.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody for watching. That basically wraps up the show, and we'll see you guys next time. Go Niners.